Victoria could only watch helplessly from the side. Kim had admitted defeat, which meant that she would be going to Warhawk. "Miss Kim, you can't give up like this," Camilla said. She'd guessed that Stephen might have received an urgent mission that he had no choice but to leave, but she couldn't reveal his identity. And under such circumstances, even if she did tell the Cassidy family that he was the commander-in-chief, they wouldn't believe it. Or they would refuse to believe it. No one would associate the commander with Stephen. "But the truth is that I did lose the bet," Kim said. She didn't want to accept it, but that was the truth. In the eyes of the Cassidy family, Stephen had followed in his father's footsteps and abandoned his family. He had run away and left them behind. Natalie sat beside Kim. "Isn't it better that Stephen didn't come back? He's the one who provoked the Addams family, not us." "Now that he's not here, the Addams family won't be able to blame us," Kyle added. "Mr. Terrence told us that your child couldn't take on their family name. The father is gone, so what's the point in having the surname Addams?" Helen was the most relieved out of everyone in the Cassidy family. Even if they couldn't form a connection with the Addams family, the last thing they wanted was to become their enemy. The Addams family was ranked first for a reason, and they could ruin them in a matter of minutes. Kim was in control of the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation. Not to mention, the royal families of New York City and Hawthorne Society had expressed their loyalty to her. Previously, these were existences that were beyond the Cassidy family's reach. But Kim had obtained all of them overnight. And she was a member of the Cassidy family. Her achievement elevated their status and allowed them to enter the ranks of upper-class families in New York City. Helen was very satisfied with the results. She and the family had high hopes for Kim, because without her, they were nothing. Kim blinked back tears. "I admit defeat. I'll go to Warhawk as I promised. My child's surname will not be Addams. It'll be Cassidy. As for Stephen, I'll cut all ties with him. We're no longer husband and wife. We'll part ways from today onwards." The Cassidy and Haynes families were thrilled. Natalie held Kim's hand with a smile on her face. "I've already warned you that Stephen couldn't be trusted. Your life will be better now that you've gotten rid of him." "Kim, don't worry," Kyle said. "Your mom and I will go with you to Warhawk. You won't be alone." He turned to Victoria. "Your son and my daughter no longer have any relationship. Please pack your things and leave." The rest of the family supported him. "He's right. Get lost. You're not welcome here. You're just like your son." "Kim, let me stay by your side," Victoria pleaded. "I've been taking care of you all this time. I know your diet and lifestyle the best. My son isn't around, but I can still take care of you in his place." Kim shook her head. "Auntie, there's no need for you to be here. You should leave and go back to your family in New York City." Victoria froze. Auntie? Kim had always called her Mom. Victoria instantly grasped the situation. It didn't matter how much Kim believed in Stephen and waited for him to come back. The fact remained that he had disappeared without a word. He'd left at a time when tension was high among the Cassidy and Haynes families. They were already afraid that he would run off, and his disappearance had only proved their point. Kim's child was about to be born, but her husband wasn't around, and she didn't know when or if he would ever return. She had to make the best decision for her child, her husband's mother, and herself. The Cassidy and Haynes families had never tried to hide their disdain for her, because she was Stephen's mother. If she stayed, she would have to face criticism and contempt on a daily basis. How would that kind of life be any different from her life in the town by the sea? She didn't want to leave, but Kim had made her decision with her well-being in mind. It would be better if she returned to the Sierra family. "All right, I'll leave," Victoria said. "But before I go, can I ask you something?" Kim nodded. "When your child is born..." Kim interrupted Victoria before she could finish. "You can come visit us whenever you want. As for the other things, I can take care of it." With that, Victoria packed her bags and prepared to return to New York City. The Cassidy family finalized their arrangements for Kim's trip to Warhawk. Rome got in touch with a private plane to Warhawk without an appointment. They would be leaving at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and arrive in Warhawk in the middle of the night. He'd booked a flight so smoothly that the Cassidy family was impressed. Helen showered him with praise. Aside from Kim, Rome had become the person with the next highest status in the family. Natalie and Kyle were also busy. They packed their luggage and prepared to follow Kim to Warhawk. Rome would be accompanying them to get to know them better. They arrived at the airport at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The private plane was already waiting for them. The Cassidy family said their goodbyes. Helen called out to Kim just as she was about to board.
Kim, Warhawk is the strongest country in the world. Its medical technology is advanced and can't be compared to ours. Don't stress when you get there. Everything will be okay.
All right. Take care of yourself too, Grandma. At the island state, Silas was monitoring Kim's every move. He stood at the front of the conference room and faced the other higher-ups. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Washington, D.C. Kim has just boarded a private plane. According to the flight schedule, it'll be 11 p.m. in Warhawk when she arrives. The higher-ups listened intently. This was their opportunity to take action. Anything could happen to a citizen of the United States on Warhawk's territory. We'll use this time to make preparations. We have to capture Kim, without fail. With Silas's instruction, the higher-ups dispersed. He was left alone in the conference room with his subordinates. Kim isn't the only one we'll be capturing. Victoria is still at large. The commander-in-chief isn't an ordinary person. We can't make a single mistake. His subordinates acknowledged his order and got to work. The Alliance meticulously prepared for Kim's arrival. The airport in Warhawk had cleared out with the excuse that a certain department would be conducting a drill. Besides Kim's plane, no other plane would take off or land during this period of time. Tens of thousands of their people were hiding in the airport's vicinity. They would take action as soon as Kim's plane landed. Silas's subordinates infiltrated the United States. They were lying in wait on the road from Washington, D.C. to New York City. They would capture Victoria when she passed by. I heard Silas has begun his operation, Raphael said. He looked down at the left envoy of light from his throne at the temple's underground palace. Yes, the commander-in-chief's wife boarded a private plane at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She should be landing at 11 p.m. in Warhawk. The Alliance has stationed its people around the airport. In addition, Silas has sent his people to ambush the commander-in-chief's mother in the United States. Their plan is likely to succeed. Good. Since Silas is making things easy for us, we should do our part and add fuel to the fire. Recently, the situation on the battlefield has been unfavorable for our side. The commander-in-chief is also the Grand Palace Master. He's been lying low for the past few years, but he's still strong, the left envoy of light explained. His troops have taken back the 2 strongholds that we seized. Then this will be our best chance to eliminate him. Lead 100,000 reinforcements to the western border and assist our troops. We have to get rid of him, no matter what it takes. Understood. Another intense battle broke out at the western border. There was no time for Stephen and his troops to catch their breaths. Even if Stephen wanted to, he never had an opportunity to check up on Kim. The opponent was Devil's Hall's left envoy of light. He was a general whose strength was second only to Raphael himself. At 11 o'clock at night, a certain airport in Warhawk was eerily quiet despite its bright lighting. A plane approached from afar and prepared to land. Kim was nervous as she looked out the window. We're here, Rome said. Let's get off. I'll call my friends right away and ask them to pick us up. They'll drive us to the best hospital here. Silas was monitoring the situation. He gave instructions to his subordinates using a satellite phone. Kim Cassidy has arrived in Warhawk. Victoria Sierra is on her way to New York City. Be alert and prepare to take action. Victoria had decided to take a bus to New York City. In the beginning, the bus was full of passengers, but one by one they got off. Halfway through their journey, she was the only passenger left. Victoria was starting to feel uneasy. It wasn't common for a bus to New York City to be this empty at this time of day. All of a sudden, the driver slammed on the brakes, and an ear-piercing screech filled the air. A large group of people whose faces were obscured by hoods and masks were blocking the path up ahead. At the highest authority in the United States, a man with white hair was hunched over his desk, carefully looking over a confidential report. He was the supreme leader of the country. When he reached the end of the report, he called out for the Leviathan unit. A man in a suit rushed into the room. "The western border is in danger. The commander-in-chief is fighting with his life on the line, but there are those who are targeting his family. We can't abandon those who fight for our country. Tell General Kylan to come and see me." "Are you planning on—" "But General Kylan and Commander Adams have always been at odds." "I'll take care of it. I believe that for the sake of the country, personal grudges can always be set aside. Even if Kylan doesn't want to assist Stephen, he won't ignore my order." At the western border, corpses lay in piles on the battlefield. A majority belonged to Devil's Hall's army, while the rest were soldiers from Stephen's troops. The left envoy of light had brought 100,000 reinforcements. At some point, they seemed to have lost their minds and launched a fierce counterattack. They didn't hesitate to use human bombs. Stephen's side had suffered heavy losses. Neither side had the time to clean up the battlefield. Stephen and the four great generals sat down to take a short breather. "What's wrong, Mr. Adams?" Rosalind asked. "You're strangely quiet." Stephen looked over the battlefield in the direction of Washington, D.C. "I have a bad feeling." He couldn't shake the feeling that Kim and Victoria were in danger. The anxious look on Stephen's face was all the four great generals needed to understand what was bothering him. Before Rosalind left for the border, she'd set up an intelligence network to monitor the situation in the district. They had been caught up in the intense conflict since they arrived, so she hadn't had a chance to check up on the situation. Rosalind took out her laptop and frowned at the information displayed on the screen. "Mr. Adams, your wife and your mother are in danger. Should we temporarily leave the battlefield and head to the district?" Stephen turned her down without hesitation. "No, we can't abandon our comrades. Rosalind, you should know that our situation on the battlefield has changed. We're up against a powerful opponent from Devil Hall. If we leave, we'll be giving them an opportunity to turn the tides. We won't be able to recover from this." Rosalind's heart clenched. "But what about your family? Dennis, Zachary, and Jaden joined in and tried to dissuade Stephen. "You don't have to try to convince me. As the commander-in-chief, I can't leave the battlefield." Stephen gestured to the exhausted soldiers who were resting nearby. "I'm not the only one with a family. They're risking their lives for the country. As their commander, I can't abandon them. The border will fall into the hands of the enemy if we leave." The four great generals lowered their heads, not knowing what to say. "Don't bring this up again. We should focus on defeating Devil Hall as soon as possible." Despite the confident front that Stephen was putting on, he was worried about Kim and Victoria. He could only place his hopes on Juan. He was the only one in Washington, D.C. who had the ability to protect them. But there was a high chance that the Alliance would send thousands of their people to the district like the last time. Juan and his team might not be enough. The faint sound of a helicopter caught Stephen's attention. Who would be coming to the battlefield at a time like this? He looked into the distance. A helicopter with the symbol of a serpent approached them. It was the Leviathan unit. The same two members who had given Stephen the emergency transfer order in the district jumped out of the helicopter and headed straight for him. They greeted Stephen respectfully. Although they had special identities, their positions were below the commander-in-chief. "What instructions do you have for me?" Stephen asked solemnly. The Leviathan unit represented the leader of the country. If they were here, the situation might be worse than he'd thought. To his surprise, they gave him a smile instead. "We are here to reassure you." "What do you mean?" "The situation is like this. Our leader is aware that you're concerned about your family." Stephen didn't try to hide it. "I am. I made many enemies during the war 6 years ago. They've always been waiting for an opportunity to get back at me, and my family is the perfect target. That's why we're here to give you peace of mind. We've discovered the reason behind Devil Hall's reappearance. The chief military advisor of the Alliance, Silas Hahn, was pulling the strings. The Alliance didn't give up after you defeated more than 10,000 of their forces in the recent battle. They contacted Devil Hall to lure you away from your family, to create an opportunity to abduct them. Stephen sighed.
So it was him. He must have some tricks up his sleeve to be able to contact Devil Hall. I remember he was a nobody 6 years ago. He was one of the many subordinates of Jer Wilkins, the previous advisor of the island state.
When Stephen destroyed the island state's previous regime 6 years ago, Silas was a small-time follower of Jer. He could still remember the fear on Silas's face after Jer escaped and left his people behind. Stephen didn't think much of him at the time, but his leniency was what put Kim and Victoria in danger. There's something else we came to tell you, the Leviathan unit member said. Your wife is in Warhawk with her parents. Stephen's expression changed. If there was one country that he was afraid of, then it was Warhawk. They were the strongest country in the world. Not only were they powerful, they were unethical and would resort to underhanded tactics to achieve their goals. Your mother is on her way to New York City. The Alliance has sent people to intercept her. But rest assured, neither Silas nor the Alliance will succeed. Our leader has made it clear that he will not abandon his soldiers. All of you fight for your country, and the country will not let you down. We've already sent people over to protect your wife and your mother. Stephen and his troops' determination was renewed. The Leviathan unit represented their leader. Their words held weight as if their leader were here in person.
Thank you,
Stephen said.
Could you tell me who you sent to protect my family?
General Kylan Gale. Stephen was surprised to hear Kylan's name. Before the Alliance attacked the country 6 years ago, Kylan was the strongest person in the army, and he also had the highest rank. Although Kylan was strong, he was lacking when it came to military formation and strategy. The Alliance took advantage of his weakness and attacked. The country was in a precarious situation, and Kylan himself almost died on the battlefield. At that crucial moment, Stephen appeared out of nowhere and saved the United States. Kylan learned from Stephen's military tactics and worked hard to improve himself. In the war with the Alliance, aside from the 4 great generals, he had one of the most outstanding military achievements. Later on, his military exploits were only second to Stephen's. The officials awarded him a rank that was just below the commander-in-chief. However, Kylan was brutal, and he had a tendency to slaughter all the residents of the cities he ravaged. Although the enemy was afraid of him, he gave the country a bad reputation. After the war ended 6 years ago, the officials immediately called him back to Annapolis. Kylan had never agreed with Stephen being the commander-in-chief. His achievements weren't inferior to Stephen's in any way. He believed that that title belonged to him. Stephen was more skilled in military tactics, but he wouldn't have been able to pull them off without Kylan. They were both on the same side, so they had never faced each other head-on. Kylan had always believed that his strength was above Stephen's.
If it's General Kylan, then I can rest easy,
Stephen said. The entire military knew he and Kylan weren't on the best terms. Their relationship was like fire and water after the awards ceremony. If it weren't for the officials' interference, Kylan would have already fought him to the death. If Kylan was willing to step forward to protect his family, that meant that the officials had put a lot of effort in to convince him. Kylan may be merciless, but he was someone who wouldn't let his personal feelings cloud his judgment. To ensure the safety of the border by giving Stephen peace of mind, he was willing to temporarily set aside his personal grudge. Kylan had done him a huge favor, so he had to repay him. But aside from the title of Commander-in-Chief, there was really nothing he could give him. The Leviathan unit received an update. General Kylan is already in Warhawk, and his 4 students are on their way to your mother. Stephen nodded.
I'll do my best to deal with Devil Hall and ensure our country's peace.
He rounded up his troops and prepared to enter the battlefield once more. The Leviathan unit members saluted them from a distance. Victoria was alarmed when a group of large hooded figures blocked the road up ahead. She called out to the driver, but he didn't respond. He seemed to be frozen in shock. Just as the dense crowd was rapidly approaching the bus, the tide shifted. Numerous hooded figures collapsed, one after another. A dagger was embedded in their backs. The crowd noticed the abnormality and turned around. Kylan's 4 students stood behind them. 2 of them were throwing daggers from a distance, while the other 2 rushed forward and engaged in close combat. One punch was enough to take down one hooded figure. The dense mass of shadows fell like dominoes. The rest turned tail and fled when they realized that they were outclassed. The ground shook from the stampede. A few of their members lost their lives because of the panic. Kylan's 4 students gave chase. In no time at all, the crowd of hooded figures were eliminated. Their teacher was Kylan, after all. They showed no mercy in the face of their enemies. They believed that if the root of the grass was not removed, there was always a chance that it would grow again in the spring. The 4 of them entered the bus and made their way to Victoria, who was hiding behind one of the seats. "Miss Victoria, please relax. You're safe now. We're here to escort you to New York City." Meanwhile, in Warhawk, tens of thousands of martial artists from the Alliance emerged from the shadows. To capture Kim as soon as possible, Silas personally made a trip to Warhawk. The commander-in-chief's wife had to be in the island state's custody. Just as Silas was about to give the signal, a familiar face appeared under the moonlight. The man's gaze was sharp, and his eyes were locked on Silas. Silas took a cautious step back as the man approached. "General Kylan Gale?" "You have a good eye," Kylan said coldly. What are you doing here?" Silas stuttered. 6 long years had passed since the war. He was no longer the underling he used to be. Now, there were only 2 people who would scare him, the commander-in-chief and Kylan Gale. Kylan was famous for his merciless personality. His methods were particularly ruthless, and in terms of strength, he wasn't inferior to Devil Hall in the slightest. "I came to tell you to take your people and get the hell out of here. Kim Cassidy is under my protection." "Why are you protecting the commander-in-chief's wife? You and him have always been at odds. Do you really expect me to believe that you came all the way to Warhawk to protect his woman?" Everyone in the Alliance knew that the commander-in-chief and General Kylan had never been on good terms. They hadn't factored Kylan into their plans because they didn't think he would be an issue. But there he was, protecting the commander-in-chief's wife. "It's not that I'm not on the best terms with Stephen," Kylan said. "I know you are planning to use the discord between us to take over our territory. Clearly, you've underestimated me. My grudge against Stephen is personal. I'm not that petty. I will not tolerate anyone who schemes against my country." Kylan's unexpected appearance had thrown a wrench in Silas's plan, but he composed himself when he remembered that they were in Warhawk. The island state had always been Warhawk's follower. "I admit that you're strong, but this is Warhawk, not the United States. There's only one of you, and more than 10,000 of us. You won't be enough to protect his wife." "Is that so?" Kylan held up his hand as a signal. Silas turned around in surprise. More than half of the Alliance's people were on the ground. "Don't think that just because we're in Warhawk that I won't kill you. If you don't want to die, then you'd better get out of here. You can forget about Kim Cassidy." Silas considered his options, but there was really only one. This was Warhawk. Even though the Alliance's forces outnumbered Kylan and his subordinates, fighting him head-on would be a huge risk. If they provoked him, with his personality, he would make sure he razed this place to the ground. If that happened, not only would Kim escape, Silas would be held accountable by the officials from Warhawk. That is, if he didn't die by Kylan's hands first. After weighing the pros and cons, Silas gritted his teeth and said, "I apologize for bothering you, General Kylan. We'll withdraw." He ordered his people to retreat, and they met up with the other higher-ups of the Alliance. "Are we really going to retreat like this?" one of them asked. Silas glared at him. We don't have a choice. That was General Kylan. Who would dare to provoke him? Out of everyone here, Silas was the most disappointed. He'd put in a lot of effort for the sake of capturing the Commander-in-Chief's wife. He'd even contacted Devil Hall. But his operation had failed. Silas couldn't understand why Kylan would help the Commander-in-Chief. If they abducted Kim as planned, Stephen's morale would drop. Devil Hall could have taken advantage of his moment of weakness and killed him. The position of the Commander-in-Chief would be vacant, and the only person in the United States who was qualified to take over was Kylan. No matter how he thought about it, this should have been an opportunity that Kylan couldn't pass up. Silas turned to the other higher-ups. It seems that Kylan is fated to be a general for the rest of his life. He'll never become the Commander-in-Chief with that kind of mindset. But with him here, we'll have to retreat and come up with another plan. After Silas and the Alliance withdrew, Kylan waited nearby and kept an eye on Kim. When Kim, Natalie, Kyle, and Rome stepped off the plane, an enthusiastic group was waiting for them. Rome thought that these were the people he'd been in contact with, but little did he know that the officials of the United States had long replaced them in secret. The leader of the team gave them a warm welcome. Miss Kim, welcome to Warhawk. We've arranged the best private hospital for you. Thank you, everyone. I'll be in your care. The leader smiled in response. With General Kylan watching from the shadows, who would dare disrespect her? They led Kim and her family to the designated hospital. It was the best hospital in the area. Kim had been assigned a luxurious suite. All arrangements were made with the utmost care. Natalie was very satisfied. Rome, it's thanks to you that I could experience a VIP suite. After this, I'll have to get Kim to thank you properly. There's no need for that, Aunt Natalie. I'm only doing what I should. When we first brought up the idea of taking Kim to Warhawk, Stephen was against it. But look at the environment. It's great. You're right, Kyle said. We would have regretted it if we listened to him. Natalie's mood soured. He's worse than scum. Not only did he abandon Kim and their child, he even left his mother behind. Kim rolled her eyes. Mom, we're already overseas. Let's stop talking about the past. Natalie, Kyle, and Rome immediately dropped the topic. Kylan, who was monitoring them from a distance, overheard their conversation. He didn't think that someone like Stephen, who was capable of instilling fear into the enemies with his title alone, would get involved with a cliché family like the ones on TV. Kylan began to feel some sympathy for Stephen's situation. He was risking his life on the border, but he couldn't tell his wife anything before leaving. He was being misunderstood by the people closest to him. Rome tried to smooth things over. Okay, let's forget about it. On another note, I heard that on the day Stephen ran away, the Commander-in-Chief, who was recuperating in Washington, D.C., suddenly left. They say he received an emergency order. Kyle's interest was piqued. Gossip surrounding the big shots was always a good way to pass the time. Is that true? Yes, he left in a hurry, as Stephen did. I heard the head of the Addams family and his son missed their chance to meet the commander because of an emergency. If I didn't know any better, I would have thought that Stephen was the commander. Natalie shot Rome a look. Are you kidding me? How could Stephen be the commander-in-chief? Anyway, I wonder what could have happened to the commander to leave in such a hurry. Rome shrugged. I don't know either. It wasn't easy for commoners like them to guess the truth behind the big shots. Kim wasn't interested in their discussion. She sat on the bed and scrolled through her phone. Because they were overseas, she had to connect to a foreign network before she could browse the internet. Rome said he would take care of it for them soon, so before that, Kim could only look at the photos on her phone. She and Stephen had taken many pictures together. Every picture was a memory. If Kim knew for certain that Stephen wouldn't be coming back, she would erase these pictures forever. Despite everything, a part of her believed in him, so her only option was to leave them alone. 2 nurses came into the room with medical supplies for a checkup. They spoke in the national language of Warhawk. Kim was fluent in multiple languages, so they didn't need a translator. When the two nurses came over, they caught a glimpse of the pictures on Kim's phone. It was only for a second, but the familiar face was unmistakable. The nurses exchanged a glance. Both of them were thinking the same thing. Just as Kim was about to put her phone away, one of the nurses quickly asked, "Miss Kim, can we take a look at the pictures on your phone?" Kim didn't know why the two nurses wanted to see her pictures with Stephen. It was an ordinary picture, nothing special. She opened her photo album and held out her phone. The nurses' eyes widened. They looked at each other. It really was that person. Stephen's identity was top secret in the United States, but they couldn't keep his identity a secret overseas. He became famous after the war 6 years ago, and many people, especially the upper class, remembered his face. This private hospital was located in a high-end neighborhood. Most of the patients that the nurses came in contact with had a wealthy background. These two nurses had heard quite a few of their patients discussing the commander-in-chief. And not too much time had passed since he defeated more than 10,000 forces from the Alliance. It remained a hot topic among the upper classes in Warhawk. The commander-in-chief was famous, but the two nurses decided to be careful with their words. "Miss Kim, is the man in the picture your lover?" "He used to be," Kim replied. "Until he disappeared without a word," she thought. The two nurses looked surprised. "Are you two both from the United States?" "Yes, we are. Why are you two so concerned about him? Do you know who he is?" The two nurses exchanged a glance and laughed. "Of course not. He just looked like a nice person, so we were curious about your relationship. Sorry if we made you uncomfortable." They often interacted with the upper class, so they were quick thinkers. They also had enough experience with them to know what they should or shouldn't say. Kim wasn't interested in their curiosity. Their conversation brought up memories from the past. Stephen was kind and considerate, but he was also irresponsible. He'd left without a word at an important time. After receiving news that Kim and Victoria were safe, Stephen wasn't worried about anything else. His morale rose as the battle raged on. He wanted to go home as soon as possible so he could see Kim again. Devil Hall's army was stronger than 6 years ago, but Stephen and his troops forced them to retreat. Devil Hall had started out with 200,000 troops. Now, they were left with tens of thousands. The left envoy of light cursed Silas and the Alliance when he found out that they had failed to capture Kim and Victoria. The commander-in-chief and his troops' fighting spirit was as strong as ever. They were being pushed back. A scout ran over in a hurry. "They're launching an all-out attack on us. They've already charged into our camp." Neither the left envoy nor the generals under him had expected this. If they were going all out, that meant that the final battle was coming. "Sounds like the commander-in-chief is in a hurry to end the battle so he can go home," the left envoy said. This battle had gone from showing off their strength to being at a complete disadvantage. His generals were growing anxious. "We haven't lost yet. Why are you panicking? Since the final battle is here, then it's time to reveal Mr. Raphael's trump card." He clapped his hands. More than 1,000 soldiers from Devil Hall emerged from the darkness. Their eyes were unfocused, and their movements were stiff. They were like living corpses. Under the command of the left envoy of light, they obediently headed to the battlefield. At this moment, Stephen and his troops were sweeping Devil Hall's army. Wherever they went, countless Devil Hall soldiers fell. The entire battlefield was filled with corpses. The blood flowed like rivers. Stephen and his troops were covered in their enemy's blood. Just as Devil Hall's army was about to be wiped out, the sound of footsteps halted the fighting. Stephen and the 4 great generals looked over. Another wave of Devil Hall's army was rapidly approaching. "They seem different from the people we've been fighting," Dennis said. "They are different," Rosalind said. "If I'm not mistaken, they might be puppets." Stephen tensed. "Everyone, stay alert!" A puppet was much harder to deal with than a regular person. When the wave of puppets lunged, Stephen and his troops swung their blades to counter their attacks. But these dummies didn't have any sense of fear or pain. Even after being struck down, they stood up relentlessly. Some of their limbs were missing, but they were still able to move like corpses. They continued to attack with their disfigured bodies. The left envoy of light and his generals watched from a distance as the puppets surrounded Stephen, the 4 great generals, and the rest of his troops. "It's like they're immortal," Rosalind called out. "How are we supposed to suppress them if they don't stay dead?" Zachary raised his fist. "What else can we do? Of course, we should punch our way through. I don't believe that we can't beat a bunch of living corpses." "Calm down, Zachary," Stephen said. "We'll be wasting our energy. We need to find their gate of life." While they were forming a strategy, Devil Hall's army repositioned themselves outside the encirclement of puppets. They raised their brows and aimed their flaming arrows. "They're planning to burn us alive with these puppets," Dennis exclaimed. "That's not enough to take us down. I already know where the left envoy of light is." The moment Stephen leapt into the sky, Devil Hall's army fired a barrage of flaming arrows. He charged straight through and rushed towards the left envoy. Stephen maneuvered through the air and changed the direction of the arrows as he moved. The arrows struck the puppets below and engulfed the battlefield in a sea of fire. In only a few moments, Stephen was at the front of the left envoy. He grabbed the envoy's neck at lightning speed. The left envoy hadn't expected him to be so fast. A hidden dagger appeared in his palm, and he struck Stephen in the chest. The left envoy of light was a top executive of Devil Hall. The fact that he was able to counterattack after Stephen restrained him proved the strength of Devil Hall's army. The 4 great generals charged towards the puppets and tried to make an opening to get to Stephen. "Despicable scum!" Stephen pulled the dagger out from his chest. "Something like this isn't enough to hurt me." He plunged the dagger into the left envoy's chest and released his grip on his neck. The hint of a faint smile played on the envoy's lips as he fell lifeless to the ground. The 4 great generals rushed over. "Are you okay?" they asked in concern. "I'm fine." Following the left envoy's defeat, the puppets stopped moving and collapsed. The 4 great generals realized what Stephen had meant by the gate of life. "Controlling humans like puppets is a mystifying dark art of Devil Hall," Stephen explained. "Fortunately, the left envoy of light hadn't mastered the technique. If he had, it would have been much more difficult to take them down." He touched his chest where the left envoy had stabbed him. Black blood smeared on his hand. "Mr. Adams, let me examine your wound," Rosalind said. As soldiers who spent most of their time on the battlefield all year round, the 4 great generals were more or less proficient to some degree with their medical skills. Rosalind didn't find anything unusual after inspecting the wound. All of a sudden, Stephen felt strangely nervous. He couldn't calm down. "What's wrong?" the 4 great generals asked worriedly. "I have a feeling that my child is about to be born." The 4 of them heaved a sigh of relief. That was a good thing. As a matter of fact, Stephen's intuition was spot on. At the private hospital in Warhawk, Natalie and Kyle were standing outside the delivery room, waiting anxiously. The Cassidy and Haynes families weren't planning to come to Warhawk, but they couldn't wait around at home during an important time like this. All of them had rushed to Warhawk, but according to the hospital's rules, only Kim's parents could wait outside the delivery room. The rest of them had to wait elsewhere. After 3 hours of waiting, there was finally a loud cry from the delivery room. The doctor came out. "Congratulations! It's a healthy baby girl. Please come in." Kyle and Natalie thanked him and hurried inside. The Cassidy and Haynes families arrived shortly afterward. Everyone was fond of Kim's daughter. "She's so cute," Natalie said. "Look at her eyes and her eyebrows. They're so similar to Kim's. When she grows up, she'll be just as beautiful and intelligent as her mother."
"Have you thought of a name?" Helen asked.
"I've already decided. Kim said. My daughter's name will be Valeria Cassidy.
Valeria Cassidy, Helen repeated. That's a great name. With this, we've severed all ties with that heartless man. She's a full-fledged member of our Cassidy family.
She's also a member of the Haynes family, Gordon added. Although they hated Stephen, they liked Kim's daughter very much. While Kim was in the hospital, she'd secretly instructed Jasmine to continue searching for Stephen, but he was still nowhere to be found. A few months had passed. It was like Stephen had vanished into thin air. In the eyes of outsiders, Kim's husband ran off a few months before she was due after being threatened by the head of the Addams family. It was a logical assumption drawn from irrefutable evidence, such as his numbers going out of service and his friends disappearing at the same time. Mom, Dad, there's no reason for us to stay here anymore, Kim said. Let's pack our bags and go back to Washington, D.C. Kim, don't you think you're in too much of a hurry? Natalie asked in concern. You've just given birth. You should rest for a while. Maybe for a month? Whether we go home now or 1 month later doesn't make a difference. And this is a VIP suite. It's a comfortable environment. The Cassidy and Haynes families agreed. No, I want to go back right now. I'm not used to staying abroad for so long. Natalie could only give in. All right, let's go home. After thinking it over, they had indeed been overseas for quite a while. It had been a few months since Stephen disappeared. Perhaps it was time to go home. While they were in Warhawk, Kylan had been protecting them from the sidelines. If he weren't here, there was no telling if Kim's daughter would have been born at all. When Kim's family finished packing, Kylan revealed himself and told them that he would escort them back to Washington, D.C. As an outsider who understood both sides of the story, he understood why Kim was in a hurry to return home. Stephanie was the first person in the Sierra family who received news of Kim's daughter. She hurried to find Victoria and brought her up to speed. Oh, and Kim and her family are coming home soon. They've already booked a flight, so they'll probably be back tomorrow. Victoria was thrilled by the news. That night, she was so excited that she couldn't sleep. The next morning, she went straight to Washington, D.C. from New York City. When Victoria knocked on the villa's doors, it was the Cassidy and Haynes families who answered. Kim was resting in her room. How did you know we were coming home today? Natalie demanded. Anyway, you have no business coming here. You're not part of our family. I know my son made a mistake, but I can make up for it, Victoria said. I can take care of Kim and her daughter. There's nothing you can do to make up for that, Kyle snapped. Do you know what Kim named her daughter? Helen asked. Valeria Cassidy. Victoria went quiet. Does Kim want to cut off all ties with Stephen? Of course she does. But since you came all the way here, we'll allow you to take one look at her daughter. And one look was all Victoria got before she was told to leave. On her way back to New York City, she couldn't help but feel like she'd failed in life. When she was young, the man she'd fallen in love with had broken her heart. And now, their son had followed in his footsteps and abandoned his family. At this time, the Addams family was having a meeting in the hall. The deadline for the bet is coming up, Terrence said. Any sign of Stephen? No, but I have news about his wife, Kim Cassidy, Johan replied. She gave birth to a baby girl in Warhawk. What's her name? That was what Terrence cared about the most. If Kim gave her daughter Stephen's surname, that would be challenging the Addams family's authority. There would be consequences, and he wouldn't hesitate to show her what it meant to offend them. Valeria Cassidy, Johan said. I heard it was Kim who had named her daughter. Terrence leaned back in his chair. It seemed like they wouldn't have to do anything after all. I see. She was adamant about giving her child our family's name the last time I spoke with her. It's interesting how fast she changed her mind. It's obvious that she's drawing a line between her and Stephen, Johan said. Looks like she's disappointed in him. It would be strange if she wasn't disappointed. Any news about Stephen? No. I've been searching for him for the past few months, but there's no trace of him anywhere. He certainly has a talent for hiding. But even if we have to search the entire country, we have to find him. That won't be easy, Johan said. It's been months. If I had to guess, he might be hiding abroad. He must have known that we wouldn't be able to escape us if he hid in the U.S. The bet would be over soon, and many people are waiting for that day. Maybe it's a good thing if he doesn't show up. We can win without a confrontation, and Stephen's reputation will be ruined for good. Johan nodded. That would be best, but to be honest, Stephen's not the type to run away. What if he's planning something in secret? On the day of, he might reappear out of nowhere and catch us off guard. Terence considered it. That is a possibility, but it's not likely. Think about it, Johan. On the day your future wife gives birth, would you leave her side? Of course not. It's a special moment. I'd have to be there. That's right. But on this special day, Stephen never showed up. That proves that he doesn't care about his child. He probably won't be coming back, and he won't be showing up on the day of the deadline either. It's kind of a shame. I wanted to see him defeated by my own hands with the entire country watching. Not to worry, Terence said. Even if he doesn't show up, his reputation will be ruined. Everyone will think of him as someone who ran away because he was afraid of the Addams family. Then, our family's name will be the topic at every conversation. After Kim returned to Washington, D.C., she took a break for a short time before going back to work at the Wyvern Group. The company had a strong foundation to begin with, and the employees were talented. With Kim, Jasmine, Annika, and the other members of the upper management working together, the company's operations were much more stable and had the potential to expand further. And with the support of the royal families in New York City, the Wyvern Group once again became a leading business in the district. It also entered New York City's market and obtained the necessary resources to compete with Imperial Holdings. The Addams family was surprised that the Wyvern Group had revitalized so quickly, but they thought of it as Kim's final struggle and didn't pay too much attention to it. I really can't understand, Kim complained to Jasmine in her office. Why would Stephen abandon the Wyvern Group when it had so much potential? I have to say, Kim, you really do have a talent for business, Jasmine praised. The Wyvern Group was on the bank of collapse, but you brought it back to life in such a short time. As for Stephen, I don't think he abandoned his company. He just wanted to spend more time with you and take care of you while you were pregnant. Kim's expression darkened. Take care of me? What if he stayed with me because he was already planning to run away at that point? He felt guilty, so he took care of me for as long as he could. If that was what he had in mind, it would explain why he didn't care about his company. Jasmine didn't have an answer. It had been almost half a year, and there hadn't been any news from Stephen. No one knew where he was or what he was thinking. More importantly, in 3 days, it'll be the deadline for the bet between Stephen and the Addams family. None of us know where he is. How do you think the Addams family will react if he doesn't show up? Kim let out a sigh. I don't know, but there's only one thing I can do. Stephen's injury from the left envoy of light didn't affect him that much, but news of the envoy's death soon reached Devil Hall. They once again sent out reinforcements. They weren't as cohesive as the previous troops, presumably because of the envoy's death. Stephen and his troops pushed Devil Hall's army back, intending to wipe them out in one go. Toward the end of the battle, they cornered them deep in the forest. Devil Hall's army rushed at Stephen's troops as a last-ditch effort. After a fierce and intense battle, Stephen's troops eliminated the remainder of Devil Hall's army. The battlefield was a mess. The final battle had been against the remnants of Devil Hall's army, but they had still put up a decent fight. Stephen's side suffered many casualties. Stephen and the 4 great generals took a break in the corner of the forest. The battle's finally coming to an end, Stephen said, glancing up at the sky. Today's also the deadline for the bet, right? The battle was over, so Rosalind could spare some time to check up on the situation in Annapolis. Yes, but our current location is too far from Annapolis for you to arrive today. And even though we've won, there's a chance that Devil Hall will retaliate. We can't let our guard down. Stephen nodded. It's fine.
I never saw the bet as a big deal anyway."
"It's a shame, but everyone will criticize you for being a no-show," Rosalind said. "Knowing Terrence and Johan's personalities, they'll definitely take advantage of your disappearance to destroy your reputation."
"Well, I wouldn't put it past them, but it doesn't really matter. When we go home, I'll settle the score with them. How's Kim and our child doing?"
"They're doing well. General Kylan's been keeping an eye on them."
"I'm glad to hear it. I owe Kylan a huge favor. When I return, I could give him the position of commander-in-chief if he wants it."
The four great generals frowned. "Mr. Adams, you were awarded the title of commander-in-chief as proof of your contributions," Dennis protested. "You can't give it away so easily." Rosalind agreed. "General Kylan may be stronger than the four great generals, but he's not qualified to be the commander-in-chief." Stephen laughed.
"You don't have to take it so seriously. Kylan is a proud man. He wouldn't accept the position if I handed it to him. He wants to become the commander-in-chief through his own capabilities."
Far away from the battlefield in Annapolis, the city was bustling with crowds and excitement. Today was the deadline for Stephen and the Adams family's bet. Terrence had long since been certain that Stephen wouldn't show up today, but he decorated the entrance of the Adams family's residence anyway. Terrence himself sat in the front of the entrance with Johan standing behind him. "Did you invite Victoria?" "Yes, she's here," Johan replied. "Our servant will bring her over soon." Terrence spotted Victoria with one of their family's servants in the distance. He'd asked Johan to invite her to humiliate her. The Adams family had turned this day into a grand occasion. Stephen wouldn't be coming, but they had put on a show for the masses. This was a good opportunity to spread their name across the country. It wasn't just the residents of Annapolis who were here. Many people from other states had arrived just to watch the show. Everyone in the country was aware of the bet, and they had been looking forward to this day. Entertainment like this didn't happen often. Several upper-class families from Annapolis had arrived, including Celeste Lindsay and Tien Val. Even the national treasure, Dr. Lionel Sloan, was here. They were different from the bystanders because they knew Stephen's identity. They wanted to see him emerge victorious against the famed Adams family. Amy and Vanessa were also in the crowd. They had rushed over as soon as they could from their university. Stephen's old friend, David, was here as well. He had a good understanding of the inner workings of the Adams family, so he hoped that Stephen wouldn't show up. It was better to have his reputation tarnished than to lose his life over a bet. Terrence faced the bustling crowd in front of the entrance. "I'm sure everyone already knows that today is the deadline for the bet between Stephen and me. The Adams family's already made preparations. The only thing left to do is wait for Stephen to arrive." Everyone turned in the direction of the road. No one appeared. Soon, an hour passed. Stephen was nowhere to be seen. The bystanders were getting impatient. What's going on? Is Stephen coming or not? Did he get cold feet? What if he got scared and ran away? Terrence's lips curled into a smile. He'd already predicted this outcome. He gave Johan a look, who nodded in understanding. "Everyone, we can't just wait like this." Everyone's gaze focused on Johan. Terrence had already announced that after the bet had ended, he would hold a grand ceremony for Johan and officially name him as the successor. Johan's speech today would represent the head of the family. "We can't just wait around for him. What if he doesn't show up? Are we going to wait until sunset?" His words resonated with the crowd. They were here to see Stephen challenge the Adams family. It'd be a waste of their day to wait around with nothing to do. "Let's set some conditions," Johan went on. "If Stephen doesn't show up by 3:30 p.m., then the Adams family will automatically be the winner. What do you all think?" The spectators voiced their agreement. As for those who knew Stephen's identity, like Celeste, Tien, and Lionel, they didn't care about the time limit. The consequences for losing the bet weren't a big deal where the commander-in-chief was involved. David, however, was hoping that the Adams family would shorten the time so that the bet would be over and done with as soon as possible. "All right, since no one has any objections, then it's decided." And so, everyone waited. The morning and afternoon were a boring wait, but soon 3 o'clock arrived. Terrence stood up and indicated for Johan to speak. Everyone, it's already 3 p.m. and Stephen hasn't shown up. He might not appear in public ever again. Our Addams family has given him a chance to challenge us, but he didn't have the courage to show his face. He doesn't deserve our family's name. And from now on, there is no connection between Stephen and our family. We can't allow him to continue using the surname Addams. Amy scanned the crowd, searching for Stephen.
Damn it, why isn't he here yet? This is the last chance. Vanessa, think of a way to contact him. Better yet, find him.
Vanessa gave her an incredulous look. How would I know where he is? Celeste was waiting eagerly for Stephen to show up. He had the ability to crush the Addams family. I don't think he can make it today, Tien said. As a member of one of the top upper-class families in Annapolis, he had received news that the commander-in-chief had been transferred to the western border. Considering the circumstances, he felt bad for Stephen. Terrence had wanted to show off Stephen's loss in front of Victoria, so he had specifically arranged a seat for her beside him. Victoria, you've been here since this morning. It's not that I didn't want to give your son a chance. He's the one who didn't take it. Oh, and I remember someone saying that her son would make us regret it. You remember that too, right? Victoria didn't respond. Stephen had yet to appear. What she'd said to Terrence back then had become a joke. Victoria, remember when you said your son was stronger than Johan? Laurel asked. It turns out he's a coward. He accepted the bet, but he was too afraid to show up when the deadline arrived. Is this all there is to your son whom you're so proud of? Laurel had already been holding a grudge ever since Victoria belittled Johan. She was from the Phoenix family, ranked second in the country, and Terrence was from the Addams family, ranked first in the country. Johan's bloodline was noble and superior. Someone like Stephen could never compare to him. When Victoria had nothing to say to defend herself, Laurel continued. Don't say we didn't give your son a chance. We gave him a year to prepare. If your son met the conditions that we set, we would have acknowledged him as a family member of the Addams family. Both of you could have joined us. I'm not petty. It doesn't bother me that my husband had a child with another woman. He's an incredible man. Who wouldn't want him? The spectators cheered and praised Laurel for being open-minded. She was indeed worthy of being the wife of the head of the Addams family. Laurel indulged the endless compliments, but her speech didn't end there. Your son gave up the opportunity to demonstrate his capabilities. That already disqualifies him from being part of the Addams family. What we value the most is courage. That's the most important requirement. Your son doesn't have an ounce of courage. Victoria lowered her head at Laurel's sarcastic remarks. And to save his own life, he abandoned his wife and child. He's an embarrassment. In my opinion, he's worthless and has no place in this world. A voice called out from behind the crowd. Who said that? Laurel was startled. She thought it was Stephen. Terrence and Johan were just as astonished. They were criticizing Stephen for not showing up. If he appeared, the Addams family's reputation would take a hit. Wait, that sounded like a woman, Johan said. That couldn't have been Stephen. Laurel composed herself quickly. That's right, I almost fell for it. Stephen wouldn't show up today. But who was that? Under the watchful gazes of the crowd and the Addams family, a woman carrying a baby in her arms walked over. It was Kim. Behind her was a Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Jasmine was standing in front of the car. She took off her sunglasses and watched with a sigh as Kim headed for the Addams family's residence. Today was the deadline for the bet, and it had also been exactly 1 month since Kim's daughter was born. The Cassidy and Haynes families were planning to host a party, but Kim asked them to delay it. After that, Jasmine had driven her to Annapolis. Kim, what are you doing here? Johan asked. Kim took a step forward. I'm here to fulfill Stephen's end of the bet in his stead. The crowd dissolved into hushed whispers. Even Johan hadn't expected Kim to show up so suddenly. He turned to Terrence as if asking him what he should do. Are you sure you want to do this? Terrence asked. Yes, I'm sure. My husband is taking care of an important matter. He won't be able to make it back in time, so I came in his place. Tears welled up in Victoria's eyes. Kim still believed in Stephen. but she was putting herself in a dangerous situation.
Kim, you should leave. The Addams family shouldn't be taken lightly.
No, my husband has always kept his promises. He wouldn't go back on his word without a good reason. Even if he's not around, I'll fulfill his end of the bet for him. Kim's gaze swept over the crowd. So I hope that everyone here will stop slandering Stephen. They averted their eyes when her gaze fell on them. Lionel gave her a look of approval, while Amy was worried for her big sister. Terrence still couldn't believe it. Kim had only recently given birth, and her baby was in her arms. What gave her the courage to take Stephen's place? So you want to represent Stephen and challenge the Addams family? I admire your courage, Kim. Your husband would be proud if he were here. He's a coward who was too afraid to show himself, so his wife and child had to take his place. Stephen is a disgrace, Johan echoed. He ran away at an important time and shoved his responsibilities onto his family. He's not worthy of being a husband, a father, or a part of the Addams family. Laurel joined in.
A coward will always be a coward. What more is there to say?
Victoria, do you still think that your son is more outstanding than my son? He simply doesn't have the qualifications to compete with Johan. Please stop with the sarcastic slander, Kim said. As the #1 family in the country, you're better than that, aren't you? Mr. Terrence, although my husband couldn't make it today, I'm his wife, and I have the right to replace him and fulfill his end of the bet. Johan frowned. Kim, you're really stubborn. We've been waiting all day and Stephen's still not here. Did he run away, or was he delayed by this so-called important matter? I think you know better than anyone. Is taking his place really worth it? Kim nodded firmly. It's worth it. I've always believed that Stephen wouldn't run away. He's being held up by something important. When it's taken care of, he'll come back and explain everything to me. Kylan was watching from an alley not too far away. He approved of Kim's dedication and courage. While Stephen was away, he would protect his wife and his mother. The crowd was moved by Kim's passionate declaration. They became her fans. We support Kim. Mr. Terrence, please let her carry out the bet on Stephen's behalf. The crowd started chanting. All of them were in support of Kim taking Stephen's place. They were moved by her courage. In the past, communication between a couple relied on letters. It could take days, months, or even years for the letters to arrive. But even then, the bond between the couple was strong. In the present, technology had advanced to the point where communication was instant. Couples could communicate anytime and anywhere. But according to statistics, there were more divorced couples than married couples. However, Kim's bond with Stephen was strong. Her undying love for her husband moved the crowd. Many of them had once given up on romance, but her relationship with Stephen encouraged them to believe in love once more. Johan felt a little awkward when the crowd united. He once again glanced at Terrence for his input. As the family ranked first in the country, our rules are strict, Terrence began. However, I'll make an exception for you. I'll allow you to fulfill the bet on behalf of your husband. The crowd gave him a round of applause. Terrence suppressed a grin. If he kept refusing, the crowd would have accused him of bullying a harmless woman and her child. Accepting her proposal earned him the praise of the spectators. They complimented him for his generosity and deemed him worthy of being the head of the Addams family. Thank you, Mr. Terrence, Kim said. You don't have to thank me, but let's get this straight. When Stephen and I made the bet, he agreed that if he loses, he'll accept punishment from the Addams family, even if it means death. You will have to bear the consequences in his place. Kim didn't hesitate. I accept. Both parties are in agreement, so let's begin. Terrence glanced at Johan, who took this as his cue to take over. He stepped forward. Kim, I believe you're aware of the conditions we've set. As long as you achieve one of them, we will consider you the winner. Kim nodded. Yes, I've heard about that. Okay, then let's begin. Our first requirement is an achievement in politics. One of our members is a governor and a high-ranking official who manages our country's territory. Can you match up to him?
I can't.
Next, our requirement is a military achievement. Lennox Adams is the leader of the Sky Division, which is a squad under the Commander-in-Chief. Can you compete with him?
No.
Our third requirement is self-improvement and success. Fabian Adams is ranked at the bottom of the younger generation in our family. He worked hard and was selected by the Commander-in-Chief to join the Armored Cavalry Battalion. Can you defeat him?
Kim shook her head.
Our fourth requirement is the last, Kim. You're famous in the business industry, especially in Washington, D.C. I'll be your competitor this time. I have many successful businesses in Annapolis and the surrounding states, so it's not fair for me to use all of them to compete with you. I'll pick one of my businesses instead. The crowd complimented Johann for being lenient. A subordinate from the Adams family compiled the data and sent the results to Johann. He proudly read the data and statistics aloud. Imperial Holdings has a market value of $1 trillion, and they have more than 10,000 employees. The company is involved in a multitude of industries, including hotels, catering, transportation, and more. They've touched on every aspect of daily life in New York City. When Johann finished, he held out his hand to Kim, prompting her to speak. Although the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation were successful companies, the gap between them and Imperial Holdings was huge. It wasn't enough, even though Kim had recently stabilized their operations. In terms of market value alone, Imperial Holdings far surpassed the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation combined. Kim did her share of calculations, but her data couldn't compare to Johann's.
Did you hear that, Victoria? Laurel mocked.
What did you say back then? That Stephen was more capable than Johann? Imperial Holdings is just one of the many companies that my son manages. Either one of them is superior to the Wyvern Group. Terrence stood up. The bet is over. Kim wanted to represent her husband, and we gave her the opportunity. She couldn't meet any of our requirements. Therefore, I hereby announce that Stephen has lost the bet. The spectators had already predicted this outcome. They pitied Kim. She'd bravely taken on the challenge only to end up losing. Terrence turned to Kim. Do you have any objections to the results?
No, a loss is a loss. I admit that I don't meet the Adams family's requirements, but I don't think that's anything to be ashamed of. However, I hope you can announce that Stephen has fulfilled his end of the bet and challenged your family as he promised.
You've accepted the challenge on his behalf, so it doesn't count as Stephen breaking his promise. But you've lost the bet as his representative, and you will have to take on the consequences. I've already made this clear before we started. The crowd felt sorry for Kim. It was unfortunate that her competitor was the Adams family. Their family had a long history, and they had always treated human lives like grass. The bet between Stephen and Terrence was already challenging the family's authority. Stephen was a no-show, and Kim had taken on the challenge on his behalf. That was like adding insult to injury. Kim had lost, and her death in Stephen's stead was inevitable. Kim held her head high. I've lost the bet, so naturally I'll accept the consequences.
Absolutely not!
Victoria stood up and hurried over to her side.
You have a daughter to take care of. Her father may not be around, but her mother is.
Kim glanced down at the child bundled in a blanket in her arms. Victoria turned to face Terrence.
I'm Stephen's mother. He's not here, but I can die for my son.
Her brave actions moved the crowd. Stephen was hiding somewhere while his wife and his mother were trying to save him. He wasn't worth their love. Terrence scoffed. First, it was Stephen's wife who accepted the challenge in his place. Now it's his mother who's volunteering to die for him. He doesn't deserve either of you. Kylan frowned at his remarks. Terrence waved his hand impatiently. Fine. Since you're Stephen's closest family, I'll give you 1 minute to discuss. You can decide amongst yourselves who will die in his place. This was an unexpected turn of events, but the outcome hadn't changed. Someone would be dying here today, and it would be either Kim or Victoria. The Adams family had a reputation to uphold.
There's no need for discussion, Victoria said. I'll take his place.
Mom, you can't, Kim sobbed. Victoria reached out and wiped the tears from her eyes. You're finally calling me Mom again. That makes me really happy. I'm old, and I don't have many years left. But you're different. You have a whole life ahead of you. You can't throw it away. It's enough for me that you still believe in Stephen. I've always believed in him. He couldn't have left without a good reason. I know he'll come back one day. Victoria smiled. I also believe that one day, Stephen will come back and take care of you and your daughter on my behalf. The crowd was moved to tears. Lionel couldn't help but sigh. Amy and Vanessa clenched their fists in frustration. Victoria walked up to Terrence. I'm ready. Laurel smiled triumphantly. Victoria, it's your choice to die for your son, Terrence said. No one is forcing you. Will you regret it? No, I won't. So be it. Terrence signaled to his subordinate who is responsible for carrying out executions. His subordinate unsheathed his sword and walked straight to Victoria. The moment Terrence gave his order, his subordinate raised his sword. The blade glinted in the sunlight as it aimed for Victoria's neck. The crowd closed their eyes in horror, too afraid to watch the gruesome scene. A clang rang out. The crowd slowly opened their eyes. The sword had been deflected, and the broken pieces clattered harmlessly to the ground. Terrence looked around in alarm. He hadn't expected someone to interfere. Who is it? Show yourself! The Addams family's bodyguards searched the surrounding area for anyone suspicious. Their search hadn't gotten very far when a man in a military uniform walked out from the crowd. The spectators couldn't take their gaze away. His appearance was dazzling. Who is that? It looks like he just came from the battlefield. There's something different about his uniform. Do you think he's a general? Terrence looked on in bewilderment as the crowd broke into discussion. May I ask who you are? While Terrence had no impression of the man standing in front of him, the same couldn't be said in reverse. Kylan gave him a disdainful look. Who I am isn't important. The point is that the #1 family in the United States is abusing their authority.
Terrence was not pleased with the interruption. Judging from your attire, you must be a soldier. Don't ruin your future by trying to be a hero. He had the confidence to take down a soldier from the military because of a majority of the combat sovereignty rankings were made up of members of the Addams family. You don't have a right to comment on my future, Kylan replied indifferently. Terrence frowned. Are you here to ruin our family's reputation? No, you're not worthy of my time. I stepped in because I don't approve of your methods. Terrence was furious. Being humiliated by a random soldier in front of so many people was a disgrace. Just as he was about to instruct his subordinates to deal with him, the stranger spoke. Kim Cassidy and Victoria Sierra are under my protection. Whoever lays a hand on them will be killed. Terrence ignored him. He motioned to his subordinates. What are you waiting for? Get rid of him. Johan's eyes widened as it dawned on him. Wait, stop. Terrence didn't recognize the stranger, but Johan did. General Kylan Gale was only second to the commander-in-chief. Kylan was too ruthless on the battlefield, and he gave the country a bad reputation. After the war ended 6 years ago, the officials called him back and provided him with a manor to recuperate. They wanted to prevent him from negatively affecting the country's image. Since then, Kylan was rarely seen in public. Even Terrence had only heard of his name. Compared to the commander-in-chief, who was widely respected and ignited one's ambition, General Kylan was more like a legendary figure. Johan had always regarded the commander-in-chief as his role model. Not only was he familiar with his achievements, but he had also studied his rivals in depth. Kylan was famous for possessing strength that was only second to the commander. Johan had recognized him by his uniform. No one else would wear this besides General Kylan. Johan whispered Kylan's identity to Terrence. We shouldn't offend him. He's a skilled martial artist who's merciless on the battlefield. There's nothing to gain by getting on his bad side.
Kylan was indifferent to their whispering. Kim did not accept the challenge, but just because she didn't meet the requirements doesn't mean she lost the bet. The person who lost is Stephen. You should go and find him instead. And if you can't, then that just shows that the Addams family is incompetent. Terrence's anger dissipated after knowing Kylan's identity. Since you've come forward to speak up for Kim and Victoria, I'll let them go. However, a loss is a loss. The moment we find Stephen, we'll execute his punishment. Kim was relieved that Victoria would be spared. They hoped that wherever Stephen was, he wouldn't come back for the time being. The crowd respected Kim for her bravery, including Terrence. Kim, your courage is commendable. It's a shame that you married someone like Stephen. The crowd agreed with him. An illegitimate son like Stephen had run off a few months before the deadline. He didn't deserve to marry Kim. Don't you think it's strange for General Kylan to show up here of all places? Johan whispered. What's more, he stood up for 2 random women. Actually, it's not hard to understand. Terrence gestured to the crowd. At the beginning, all of them were in support of our Addams family, but when Kim appeared, they changed sides and supported her instead. They were clearly moved by her performance. If I wasn't the head of the family, I would have also been moved, so it's not strange for General Kylan to support her. I guess you're right. No one, including Johan, could read the minds of people like General Kylan. Laurel herself admired Kim's courage. It's too bad we're on opposite sides. Otherwise, I would have set aside our grudges and befriended her. Kim and Victoria pushed through the crowd and made their way to the mysterious savior, who was already walking away. Thank you for helping us, Kim said sincerely. May I ask your name? I'll definitely repay you for your kindness. You don't need to know my identity, and you don't need to return my kindness, Kylan replied coldly. However, your actions today deem you worthy of being called a hero among women. You deserve to be Stephen's woman. With that, he turned around and left. The crowd was triggered by his words. What do you mean Kim deserves to be Stephen's woman? He's not worthy of her. There must be something wrong with him. Kim stood there, bewildered. For the past few years, everyone around her had told her that Stephen wasn't worthy of her. It was only after his identity as the owner of the Wyvern Group that the criticisms let up. This was the first time someone had said something different, that she was the one who was worthy of Stephen. Victoria also wondered what he meant. But their mysterious savior had come and left like the wind. Their questions were left unanswered. The bet had concluded, and Kim and Victoria didn't want to stay a second longer in front of the Addams family's residence. They hurried away and prepared to head back to Washington, D.C. Celeste was deep in thought as she watched Kim and Victoria leave. Kim was beautiful, like Stephen had claimed, but she couldn't match up to her. However, Celeste couldn't deny that Kim was braver and stronger than she would ever be. She finally understood why Stephen had fallen in love with Kim, and why he only had eyes for her. The bet was over, and Celeste wanted to go home, but the Addams family wasn't finished. They would be holding a succession ceremony for Johan. She was from the Lindsay family, so she couldn't leave as she pleased. Ever since she got involved with the commander-in-chief, even someone like Johan, who she'd always respected, paled in comparison. On the day the bet ended, Kim's name spread across Annapolis. She became the standard of potential marriage partners. Her name would come up whenever a member of the upper class was involved in an arranged marriage. At the western border, the battle with Devil Hall was coming to an end. After an in-depth investigation, they confirmed that their army had been wiped out. Stephen instructed his troops to retreat and prepare to return. As they headed home, he glanced at the setting sun in the west. It's already sundown. I couldn't make it back in time for the deadline. The Addams family will probably take my challenge as a joke. You did miss the deadline, but your wife went in your place, Rosalind said. Stephen whirled around. What? Is she hurt? What did they do to her?
Calm down, she's fine. Rosalind told him what happened earlier in the day in front of the Addams family's residence. Stephen sighed. It's because of me that she was put in danger. It seems like I owe Kylan another favor. I already owe him so many favors. How should I make it up to him? He planned to give up his position as the commander-in-chief to Kylan after he returned and go home to see Kim and Victoria, but he knew it wouldn't be that easy. With Kylan's personality, he wouldn't accept the position so easily. There's no rush, Rosalind said. You have plenty of time to think about it. But Mr. Adams, our battle with Devil Hall this time was completely different from 6 years ago. They were stronger, and they even had an army of puppets. The left envoy of light even wounded you before he died. I inspected your wound, but aside from a trickle of black blood, there was nothing unusual. It was different this time, Stephen said. But we've wiped them out. Devil Hall no longer exists. As for the left envoy, even if his dagger was poisoned, it wouldn't have any effect on me. He spread his arms. See, I'm fine. All right, Rosalind, send a report of our investigation to the leader. It's time for us to go home. News of the commander-in-chief and his troops annihilating Devil Hall spread across the country. It replaced Kim's courageous confrontation with the Addams family on the list of trending topics. The country was proud to have a godlike existence defending its peace. The news traveled across the ocean, reaching countries overseas. Silas was having a meeting with the Alliance in the island state. Devil Hall was much stronger than they were 6 years ago, but they were still no match for the commander-in-chief. At this point, I'm afraid he's invincible. The same discussion was taking place among the higher-ups of Europe, Warhawk, and the other countries overseas. Devil Hall's underground palace was no exception. He's stronger than I expected, Raphael said through clenched teeth. Pass on my order. The temple will enter a state of confinement starting today. Will you be cultivating your strength in seclusion? The right envoy of light asked. Yes, we'll need to wait for the right opportunity. The left envoy of light's sacrifice won't be in vain. Kim became famous in Washington, D.C. after she returned. She'd accepted the challenge with the Addams family on behalf of her husband. Her courage when she confronted the #1 family in the country was an incredible feat. She received endless praise from the public. The upper-class family ranked third in the United States shared the same surname as the Cassidy family in Los Angeles. They were based in Annapolis. Their leader, Yoram Cassidy, was impressed by Kim's courageous performance. He made a decision right then and there to take Kim into his family as his adopted daughter. Both of their surnames were Cassidy, so they immediately received the full support of the Cassidy family in Los Angeles and the Haynes family in Santa Ana. With Yoram's influence, Imperial Holdings took a step back and released its hold on the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation. Even Johann had to treat the head of the Cassidy family in Annapolis with respect. The same held true for Washington, D.C. Former business competitors took the initiative to pay a visit to Kim to work out a collaboration. After all, there was no such thing as eternal enemies in the business world. As long as there were benefits, even enemies could become friends. As for Victoria, she would come over from time to take care of Kim's daughter. That gave Kim more time to focus on her job. As such, during this time, the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation's development was incredibly fast. Many of their businesses had already expanded past the district to other states. But Kim, who was dedicated to her career, did not forget to look for Stephen because she believed that he would come home one day. While Kim was busy with work in her office, there was a knock on the door. Jasmine walked in. Kim set the document on her desk. Any news? No, there's no trace of him. It's been more than half a year. Do you think he's still out there somewhere? What brought this on? They were in Kim's office, but Jasmine was worried that other people might be listening, so she leaned in and whispered, There's a rumor that the Addams family killed Stephen, but they're pretending to be oblivious. Kim stood up abruptly. What? But Stephen lost the bet. Why would they assassinate him in secret instead of exacting his punishment publicly?
I don't know, it's just a rumor. But if you think about it, given the Addams family's influence, is it really possible that they haven't found Stephen after all this time? When you took his place on the day of the deadline, the public sided with you. If the Addams family openly declared that they caught Stephen and killed him, they might draw backlash from the public. Disposing of him in secret is the safest method. No one will be able to link his death back to them. There are even rumors that he was killed half a year ago when he first disappeared. There's no evidence, so no one knows for sure.
Kim collapsed in her chair. Jasmine's analysis was reasonable. It had been a long time since Stephen disappeared without a word. If he were still alive, why hadn't he come back to her? As the days passed, the rumors festered among the masses. It dampened Kim's mood. She didn't have the motivation to work, so she stayed home to take care of her daughter. Jasmine knew the effect the rumor had on Kim, so she came over after work to spend time with her. That was one of two reasons for coming over. The other was to play with her daughter, Valeria, who was now a few months old. She was smart, and she could already say a few simple words. The Cassidy and Haynes families loved Valeria. They saw her as a precious treasure. When Jasmine came into the room, she saw Kim sitting on the bed and scrolling through her phone with a serious expression. Valeria was next to her. She was very active as she crawled around Kim. She was small and she was clumsy. Jasmine found her adorable. She picked Valeria up and kissed her cheek. "What are you looking at, Kim? Why are you so serious?" "I'm checking the news. The commander-in-chief has been at the top of the headlines recently. He's all anyone's talking about. They're calling him the Guardian of the United States. He took down Devil Hall's army twice. That's an impressive feat. You have high standards. What do you think of the commander?" "I wouldn't go after him," Jasmine said. "I'm just a citizen. When would I ever have the opportunity to get to know a hero like the commander-in-chief?" She glanced down at Valeria in her arms. "But your daughter is still young. Who knows? Maybe she'll become a hero like the commander in the future." Jasmine leaned over and looked at the article on Kim's phone. There was a picture of the commander-in-chief with his back facing the camera. "Don't you think he resembles Stephen?" Valeria waved her little hand and pointed at the picture. She mumbled the word, "Daddy." "I don't know about that," Kim said. "I've never thought of Stephen as the type to be the commander." Jasmine laughed. "I know, I was just kidding. Valeria, this man isn't your father. He's the commander-in-chief, the guardian of our country. When you grow up, you'll be someone just as incredible as him." Jasmine stopped short when a thought crossed her mind. She looked up and turned to Kim. "I really hope that the commander isn't Valeria's father. Otherwise, I don't know what I would do." Kim sighed. "We're ordinary people. We wouldn't know someone like him." Jasmine gave her a shrug. "I know, but I was saying hypothetically. Speaking of which, your daughter is talented. She's only a few months old, but she can already climb and speak." She knew that Kim was the one who had taught her daughter the word daddy. It was obvious that Kim hadn't forgotten about Stephen. She hoped that he would come back home one day, no matter how long it took. Jasmine didn't want the memory of Stephen to hold Kim back from finding happiness. "Actually, maybe the rumors aren't as baseless as they seem. Stephen might not be coming back. Even if he did have something important to take care of, what could be more important than his family?" Kim let out a sigh. She had been wondering the same thing for the past few months. While she believed that Stephen would come back, who knew how long it would take? He was gone, but life went on all the same. "He's not around anymore, but you have your own life to live," Jasmine said. "What are you trying to say?" "You know what I'm trying to say. You're young, and you have a long way to go. There's always a chance you'll find someone better." Kim shook her head. "It's not that easy. I don't know if my husband is dead or alive. He'll be in my heart like a burden for the rest of my life. Who would want someone like me?" Jasmine rolled her eyes. "You're not just famous in Annapolis.
Many people here in the district are looking for the opportunity to pursue you. Think about your daughter. It hasn't been long since she was born. Do you want her to grow up without a father? I'm just telling you to give it some thought and put yourself out there. You never know. Kim considered it. She didn't mind being alone, but what about her daughter? By the way, I heard your adoptive father introduced you to a capable man from an imperial family in Annapolis, Jasmine said. Why don't you meet him and see what happens? Now that you mention it, my father did say something about that. He's coming tomorrow. That's perfect timing. Dress up and meet with him. You don't have to commit to anything. All you have to do is enjoy a pleasant conversation over a delicious meal. As for what comes after, you decide at the end. All the newspaper outlets and media agencies in the country were reporting on the Commander-in-Chief's victory against Devil Hall. The people were praising his achievements and calling him the guardian of the country. As for Stephen, he maintained a low profile as he led his troops to Washington, D.C. The terrain wasn't easy to traverse, and it took them longer than expected. Juan, the commander of Washington, D.C.'s military base, was waiting with his other high-ranking officials to welcome them back to the district. After the battle, the supreme leader prepared a reward for Stephen. He was looking forward to giving it to him in person, but Stephen had turned him down because he was in a hurry to go home. That was one of the many reasons Juan admired him. Stephen prioritized his family over glory. Juan peered out into the distance using his binoculars. He and his officers next to him were anticipating the commander-in-chief's and his troops' return. 10 minutes later, an army appeared on the winding path to the district. A jeep pulled up to Juan. Stephen was in the back seat. Juan and the officers saluted him, welcomed him back, and congratulated him on his victory. Stephen didn't say anything, nor did he get out. He gave them a nod and returned the salute before the jeep drove off. Juan and the officers followed. That night, they held a feast for Stephen and his troops at the military base. Stephen had originally been planning to look for Kim at the villa, but it was already midnight, and she had probably gone to bed. He decided to go see her tomorrow. How's Kim doing lately? She's doing well, but Rosalind hesitated. She and the others think you're dead. Stephen was taken aback, but when he thought about it, it made sense. He'd left without saying anything to anyone more than half a year ago. There were only two reasonable explanations. He'd abandoned his family, or he was dead. Either one was plausible, and neither was good. Your wife's adoptive father arranged a blind date for her, Rosalind continued. They'll be meeting tomorrow. Stephen took a deep breath. Okay, I got it. He didn't say much after that. What could he say? This was the result of his actions half a year ago. The next day, Kim went to the tea house where she would meet with her blind date. Before she left, Jasmine had called and repeatedly reminded her to dress up. Kim didn't have as many expectations as Jasmine, but she had to try for her daughter. Kim's adoptive father, Yoram Cassidy, planned to introduce her as the successor of the Naylor family in Annapolis, Derek Naylor. They were an imperial family, and Derek was ranked third on the list of talented youths in the city. He was only second to Tien Val. Not only was Derek skilled, but he was also humble and kind. The city saw him as a modest gentleman. Because of his reputation, Yoram decided to introduce him to Kim. Although Kim was married, her husband was nowhere to be found. Under normal circumstances, she would be a burden to any upper-class family. But Yoram's family was ranked third in the country. They held considerable influence. Aside from that, he also loved Kim like his real daughter. The Naylor family was more than happy to agree to Yoram's suggestion. If the blind date was successful, they could form a connection with the Cassidy family in Annapolis and improve their status. Yoram's son, Keen Cassidy, would be accompanying Derek to Washington, D.C. Like his father, Keen cared about Kim very much. He treated her like his real sister.
Kim had risen to fame in Annapolis after challenging the Addams family in place of her husband. She'd attracted the attention of countless playboys in the city who only liked her because of her appearance. It was Keene who'd chased them away and kept her safe. He wasn't one to hold back when it came to his family, so he resorted to violence when it was necessary. None of them were brave enough to take revenge on the successor of the family ranked third in the country. It was early in the morning when Derek and Keene arrived at the tea house. Standing at the entrance, Keene patted Derek's shoulder. "You'd better treat my sister well in the future." Derek didn't know what to say. He hadn't even seen Kim yet, but he had heard about her bravery in Annapolis, so he'd been anticipating their meeting. "Don't worry, I will," he promised after a pause. Derek was ranked third among the youths in Annapolis, but he couldn't go against Keene. Keene was satisfied with his attitude. They entered the tea house together. Kim was already waiting at their table with their friend and her daughter's caretaker. Derek took a fancy to Kim the moment he saw her. Keene noticed his attraction. "What do you think? She's beautiful, isn't she?" Derek nodded profusely. "I was wondering what kind of woman challenged the Addams family. She's like a goddess." Kim was a little embarrassed by his flattery. "Then why don't you two get to know each other and—" Derek interrupted. "Miss Kim, if you don't mind, I'd like to pay a visit to your home and propose. I know you have a daughter, and I'll take good care of her with you." Kim was in disbelief. "Aren't you moving a bit too fast?" Keene thought about it. "Not really. In terms of qualifications, both of you are worthy partners." Derek was pleased that Keene thought of him so highly. "I promise I'll treat you well. We can get married first and get to know each other slowly later on." Kim opened her mouth to turn him down, but Keene interjected. "Then the matter is settled. I'll tell my father later. It'd be great if you could decide on a date for your wedding soon." "No problem." Derek glanced at the baby in Jasmine's arms. "However, I have a request." "What request?" Keene asked. "I'm interested in Miss Kim, and I'm more than happy to take care of her child. But I am the successor of the Naylor family. I have a reputation to uphold. My request is simple. I would like her daughter to take on my surname, Naylor." Keene didn't even have to think about it. "That's true. You're from an imperial family in the city. It'll be a disgrace if your child doesn't share your last name. In that case, I accept. Kim's daughter will take on the Naylor family name." Derek smiled. "Thank you." Jasmine wasn't pleased. "Why are you making all of the decisions on your own? Have you asked Kim for her opinion?" "Is there a need to ask? My sister will definitely agree." Keene turned to Kim. "Right, Kim?" Just as Kim was about to refuse, an angry voice echoed in the tea house. "Who dares to change my child's last name?" Kim and Jasmine looked at each other. Their eyes were full of doubt. That voice was all too familiar. Had he really come back? The two of them turned to the door. Their hearts thundered in their chests. Valeria also looked in the direction of the entrance of the tea house. Stephen appeared at the door. Kim and Jasmine couldn't believe their eyes. It really was him. Their minds went blank. It had been more than half a year since Stephen had gone missing. They had even started to believe that he was dead. They stared blankly at Stephen as he walked over to their table. He was still wearing his military uniform. He'd been awake since yesterday. Last night, he'd repeatedly imagined himself coming home to Kim. His thoughts kept him awake until dawn. Stephen had gotten out of bed at the first light of day to wash up. He didn't wait for the four great generals and went straight to the tea house to find Kim. He'd heard their conversation outside the door before he arrived. Keene and Derek exchanged a confused glance. They didn't recognize this man in uniform. "Kim, it's me. I'm back." Stephen walked over with big strides. He noticed the baby in Jasmine's arms. "Is this—" The child blinked up at him. Her eyes were bright with wonder as she broke into a smile. Stephen was moving before he realized it. He picked her up and carried her in his arms. She had to be his child. Her smile was exactly like Kim's.
Kim had hired a caretaker and offered her a high salary to take care of Valeria. The caretaker was alarmed when a strange man came over and took Valeria out of Jasmine's arms. "Who are you? Put her down." Valeria was shy, and she would cry nonstop if a stranger carried her. The caretaker was surprised when Valeria was quiet in the man's arms. She looked up at him without making a sound. Stephen was too focused on his daughter to hear the caretaker's warning. His daughter reached out to touch his face with their little hand and mumbled inarticulately. Stephen's heart warmed. Her words were incoherent, but he knew that she was calling for her daddy. If the citizens of the country were witnessing the hero of the country becoming a father for the first time and saw that he was no different from an ordinary person, their jaws would drop in shock. When Kim had free time on her hands, she would scroll through her pictures with Stephen with Valeria in her arms. Somehow, Valeria had picked up on the fact that the man in the pictures was her father. Stephen smiled at his daughter. "Your daddy is back." "What nonsense are you talking about?" the caretaker demanded. "Sir, please put down the child or else I'll have to call the police." She had to stay vigilant. Criminal activity involving newborns was on the rise. Who was stopping this strange man from running out the door with Valeria? Stephen rushed to explain. "Please don't misunderstand. I'm her father." Who would believe that? Her father died half a year ago. Stephen had disappeared out of the blue. Kim had to take his place when the deadline for the bet with the Addams family arrived. These facts were widely known in the states around Annapolis. As a caretaker who Kim had hired, she was up to date with the latest news. "As you can see, I'm not dead. Please believe me. I really am her father." Stephen held his daughter's hand. "Look, she's smiling at me, and she just called me her daddy." The caretaker didn't have anything to say to that. Valeria rarely took a liking to strangers, and her reaction to this strangely dressed man was unusual, but she couldn't leave things be. Before she could refute it, Derek stood up and took over. "You claim to be her father, but do you even know her name?" "If you were really her father, then you'd be able to answer such a basic question," Keen echoed. It was Stephen's turn to be at a loss for words. He wasn't around when Kim had named their daughter. His hesitation was the confirmation that Derek needed. "You don't even know her name, and you're calling yourself her father? You seem more like a kidnapper to me." Stephen frowned. "I'm not here to kidnap anyone. I'm warning you, don't talk nonsense." "I'm talking nonsense?" Derek took a step forward with a sneer and shoved Stephen backward. "If you don't leave now—" Derek stopped short when the blood splattered on his designer shirt. He looked up from his ruined shirt in alarm. "Hey, what's wrong with you? I didn't use that much strength." As the youth ranked third in Annapolis, controlling his strength was a basic skill. Stephen stumbled back as blood trickled from his mouth. He was just as surprised as Derek. His body had built up resilience from his time with the Addams family and years of being on the battlefield. He had a strong physique, and not too many people were capable of harming him. How was it possible for a light shove to have injured him to the point of coughing up blood? During the battle with the 40 Alliance countries 6 years ago, the other side was no match for Stephen. Because of his inhuman strength, the Alliance had to resort to unorthodox methods like poison. But it didn't matter how underhanded their methods were, he survived every single time. Even when his opponent was Devil Hall, their poisons were ineffective. Stephen's body was like an iron wall. It was due to his extraordinary physique and extensive training, using the unique technique that the priest had taught him. Therefore, most of the poisons did not have an effect on his body. During the recent battle with Devil Hall, Stephen was the first to take the lead. With him on the front line, they hadn't lost a single battle. As Stephen recounted the time on the battlefield, he suddenly thought of something. When he killed the left envoy of light, the envoy had used the last of his strength to wound him with a dagger. He remembered seeing his blood stained black, but he hadn't thought too much of it at the time. Thinking about it now, the dagger must have been laced with poison. At Devil Hall's underground palace, a memorial tablet had been placed on the table. It was a memorial tablet to honor the deceased left envoy of light. Several of Raphael's trusted subordinates were paying their respects. The left envoy of light sacrificed himself to poison the commander-in-chief. His sacrifice won't be forgotten. He'll be remembered even after we conquer the United States. Raphael turned to the right envoy of light. Is that poison really effective? It is. I've been undercover with an organization that specializes in poisons for the past 6 years. I gained their leader's trust. That's how I was able to get my hands on the most lethal poison in existence. When the poison enters the bloodstream, nothing out of the ordinary can be detected in the body. But once the poison is inside, it'll slowly corrode the organs. Their leader developed this poison to deal with people like the commander-in-chief, who is too strong to be killed through ordinary means. According to the calendar, the poison should be taking effect around this time. Raphael applauded the right envoy of light. Well done. Now we can sit back and wait for the poison to kill him. Our losses were worth it. The lethal poison had been Devil Hall's trump card all along. This was the reason they had cooperated with Silas and the Alliance. At the tea house, Stephen's mind was reeling. His vision was blurred, and he couldn't breathe. He turned around and managed to subtly control his condition using one of his techniques he'd learned from the priest. Only then did his symptoms ease up. He could feel it. The poison was different from the others. Kim and Jasmine snapped out of it when they saw Stephen coughing up blood. What happened to you? Are you okay? Kim asked worriedly. Jasmine was even more confused when she saw the way he was dressed. Where have you been all this time? Were you kidnapped and forced to work at a coal mine or something? Being an escapee from a coal mine wasn't that big of a stretch given Stephen's current appearance. He was dressed in a worn-out uniform, and he sported a stubble that he hadn't had time to shave. He looked exhausted, and he was leaner than they remembered. Kim's heart clenched. She'd believed that he would come back to her one day, but sometimes she would have fleeting thoughts that he was hiding somewhere and enjoying his life without them. That couldn't have been farther from the truth. If he'd really run away, he wouldn't look like this now. Stephen started. The poison exerted its effect again and cut him off. He coughed up another mouthful of blood. He turned around and suppressed the poison with this technique. His daughter in his arms reached for him as if she was concerned. Derek suddenly remembered Kim's daughter in Stephen's arms. Give her to me. Where did you even come from? That's my daughter. You have no right to carry her. Stephen stepped to the side and avoided Derek's grasp. Your daughter? I'm her father. What makes her yours? For a moment, Derek didn't know how to respond. It was his first time meeting Kim today, but he was ranked 3rd in Annapolis, and he was from an imperial family. The Cassidy family in the city was supporting them. Their marriage had been practically confirmed. Kim was his, and naturally, her daughter was also his. A man dressed like a laborer from a mine had appeared out of nowhere and claimed that Kim's daughter belonged to him. Derek could not let this go. He and Kim would be married soon, and it would affect his reputation if he couldn't even protect a single child. Derek threw himself at Stephen, who sidestepped him once more. He straightened and cracked his knuckles, preparing to give Stephen a violent beating. Keen slammed his hands on the table and stood up. The marble surface cracked. I'll give you a chance. Put down the child, or else you'll end up like this table. Kim and Jasmine hurried out of their seats and stood between them and Stephen. Calm down, Keen, Kim said. I know him. Keen paused before unclenching his fist. You should have said that earlier. Who is he? Kim let out a sigh. That's Stephen. My husband. Derek and Keen looked past her at Stephen. Kim's runaway husband, who had disappeared for more than half a year, had suddenly turned up. So that's Stephen, Keen said. He's a disgrace to all men in the country. I'm surprised he had the courage to come back. Derek sized Stephen up. So this is what a coward looks like.
To save his own life, he didn't hesitate to abandon his wife when she was pregnant, and he was heartless enough to leave his mother behind. Kim, you made the wrong decision when you chose to marry him. Kim glanced at Stephen. He must have had a rough time after he disappeared. What had he been up to? Keen, Mr. Derek, watch your words. He didn't abandon us. He's standing right here, isn't he? It's the truth, Keen snapped. Let me ask you, when you went to Warhawk to give birth to your daughter, was he around? No. When you went to Annapolis with your daughter to fulfill the bet with the Addams family, did he come back? Also, no. And when they were about to kill you and his mother, did he come to your aid? No. What more is there to say? He brushed past Kim and Jasmine and walked up to Stephen. Admit it, you stayed hidden during a time of crisis and came back after it was over. Before Stephen could say anything, Keen continued. You should already know that the Cassidy family in Annapolis has adopted Kim as their daughter. She's a member of the family ranked 3rd in the country, and she's famous in the business industry. You came back to freeload off of her success, am I right? No, that's not why I came back, Stephen said. Keen laughed. You're really shameless. Jasmine thought Keen's accusation was crude, but the facts were the facts. Stephen wasn't around when Kim was pregnant, when their daughter was born, or when she was in danger. I know you're the owner of the Wyvern Group, and your business is indeed impressive, but what you did disappointed me. Even if you had something important to deal with, you should have at least told Kim before you left. But you didn't. You disappeared without a word at an important time. And after the bet with the Addams family, you showed up again. The timing is too coincidental. Miss Jasmine is right, Keen agreed. Kim, do you still plan on defending him? He's here to leech off of you. Just cut ties with him and treat him like he's dead. In truth, Kim was happy when she saw Stephen again. The way Keen presented his claims didn't sit right with her, but aside from his speculation that Stephen had run away and intentionally came back after the crisis, he had laid down the events as they had happened. Whatever the case may be, she deserved an explanation from him. Stephen, I want to hear what you have to say. Stephen felt guilty knowing that Kim had endured so many hardships on her own. I'm sorry for letting you down, Kim. You've suffered a lot in the time I was gone. I promise I'll make it up to you. Keen scoffed. You want to make it up to her? The difficult times are over. There's nothing you can do to make up for what you've done. If you ask me, you came back to enjoy the feeling of being a father. Stephen glared at him. Watch what you say. I am the father, and I came back to be with my wife and my daughter. Is there something wrong with that? I left back then because I didn't have a choice. Do you think that's enough for an explanation? Derek said. You abandoned your family because you didn't have a choice? Looks like the rumors were true. Someone like you is a disgrace to men everywhere. In Annapolis, everyone saw Derek as a modest gentleman, but he was actually very shrewd. He subtly sowed discord and took advantage of the situation to reap the benefits. Stephen was beginning to feel anxious. I didn't abandon my wife or my mother. I swear I have my reasons. If I really did run away, I wouldn't have come back. Derek assumed his modest gentleman act. You sound confident, like you're telling the truth. Miss Kim, why don't you give him a chance to explain himself? What exactly has he been doing for more than half a year? If he really did have something important to deal with and came back after taking care of it, it has to be something that he's not ashamed of.